Alastuey, and on this channel, you will find a variety of inspirational and informational videos. If that sounds good to you and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. My guest today is Dr. John Gray, who is an avid outdoorsman and the owner of Rockport Outdoor Adventures. John is a United States Coast Guard and Texas Parks and Wildlife Department licensed captain, and has been fishing and hunting the Texas coast for most of his life. John also has 30 years of experience in education and is currently the Associate Dean for the College of Education at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas. Welcome, John.
Hey, Lisa, how are you doing today?
Great, so good to see you.
You too. Really appreciate it. I love watching your channel. And I noticed the other day you scored another John Gray. So I'm the second most popular John Gray on your channel right now.
That's right. The only difference is how you spell it. Your name is Jon.
Exactly.
So cool.
But love your channel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, John. And for those of you that don't know, John used to work with me at the University of Houston. That's how we met. And I'm so happy to see him again because it's been about over a year since he's left University of Houston. So let's go ahead and get started. What inspired you to establish Rockport Outdoor Adventures?
Well, Lisa, I grew up hunting and fishing in the outdoors, specifically in South Texas. And so that was always a passion of mine, to hunt and fish and to just be outdoors in South Texas. Growing up with my father and my uncle are the two that introduced me to it. So that turned into really a passion of fishing the Texas coast. And the three of us have hunted and fished the Texas coast for the majority of my life, and it just turned into a passion, more of an educational passion, to be honest with you, just to educate others about the Texas Gulf Coast and about our resource that we have on the coast. It's such a great way of life and a new way of life for people that have never experienced it.
Yes. Could you share a little bit about the missions and goals of your club and what kind of activities you offer?
Sure. And the mission of the club is like I mentioned, it is simply as an educational mission for youth, but of people of all ages, but really enjoy working with the youngsters. And just to show them a way of life on the Texas coast. That way of life is related to fishing. It's related to birding. I mean, birding on the Texas coast is a multi-billion-dollar business. And we just have such a rich resource on the Texas coast that my mission simply is to introduce others and just to show them the enjoyment that you can get on the Texas coast. And so I have so many friends that it's every year that they're coming down to the Texas coast to spend time with me on the water.
Awesome. So did you have any challenges when you were first establishing your outdoor adventures, and how did you overcome them?
Great question. Always challenges when you're starting up a new venture, obviously. But the main thing was trying to figure out, like you say, what is my mission? What is my goals, right? So I was really fortunate and have been very fortunate. My goals are not monetary goals, like a lot of your captains on the coast. So it is not my means of making money. And because of that, I could really pinpoint those things that I enjoy most about the coast and to be able to share those with others. So a lot of challenges, again, like you said, finding your niche and really honing in on what people are wanting to do. What do they want to experience, and how you can tailor our ventures, our experiences to what they're wanting to do. That's one of the primary things to overcome. the marketing part of it just kind of comes with it now. It quite frankly, I don't think the marketing part of what we do is harder. I actually think it's easier today. But just some of those kind of challenges, and then it's kind of a balancing act to help people to experience the things that they really want to experience, um, but not deviate too much from the way I experience those things and the enjoyment that I get from those. And what I mean by that is, you take fishing, for example. So many different ways to fish the Texas Gulf Coast. I mean, that's one thing that makes it so enjoyable. I prefer to wade fish, inshore wade fishing, and that's not necessarily for everyone, but to help people experience wade fishing, getting in the water while fishing, and that experience of catching fish while in the water. It's such a fun experience, and it can be very spiritual to some.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, I like that you cater your trips to the customer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. The primary thing that I've done for the last several years is taking people fishing, taking people wade fishing. But they're not going to truly enjoy the experience, especially kiddos, unless you're catching fish. Obviously, catching to me is a bonus. I just like being out there, but so you have to be successful. You have to um, be able to put your clients, if you will, on fish. And that can be a challenge when you're wade fishing, because wade fishing is typically a little bit harder than fishing with live bait. So I wade fish primarily with artificial bait. And there's an art to it, and it takes time, and it takes time for people to get comfortable fishing in the water. So from if I'm with people for 8 hours a day, that first day is really to help them get acclimated to getting in the water and getting comfortable fishing. And it takes a little while to do that. So, and then you have to time that with also being able to put them on fish. By trial and error, we've been really successful over the last several years, and it's been fun.
Awesome, awesome. So what do you mean by the art of it? What is the art of fishing?
Well, so wade fishing with artificials, we fish primarily around oyster reefs in the middle Texas coast. So your Texas coast is broken down to really three regions. You have the lower region, which is South Padre Island, all the way up to the JFK Causeway in Corpus Christi. And then from there, all the way to Sargent, Texas, right outside of Matagorda Bay, is your middle coast. And then from Sargent, Texas, all the way up to Sabine Pass is your upper Texas coast. And I primarily fish the middle coast of Texas, which is the coastal bend. So the way we fish artificials is we leave the boat ramp and we venture out to a lot of the barrier islands that protect our Texas coast, and we fish oyster reefs, and we fish shorelines. And the art of getting acclimated to wade fishing, um, it it just depends. It's really a full spectrum of, from teaching people about lures, about how to cast, about all the equipment part of it, um, all the way to really understanding the structures of what we're fishing and how to present the lure to the fish, and how to tie knots and all of those types of things. It's really the full spectrum from the beginner to the more advanced. And one day you could have a group of total beginners, and the very next day you could have a group of very exceptional advanced type of fishermen.
Do you have any co-captains, or are you doing this solo?
Well, at one time I had a few co-captains. It's pretty solo now, although I have a group of friends that I've fished with for so long that oftentimes if I'm taking, just one or two people out, I'll have them come along and co-captain with me. But I really what I'll do is if clients want to fish with artificial bait, then that's something they can do with me. If they're more interested in fishing with bait, then I do have a collection of local guides in the coastal bend of Texas that I put them in touch with that are just phenomenal bait fishermen. It's just not my cup of tea. It's not really how I like to spend the time in the outdoors.
Okay, cool, cool. Do you have any like specific rules or guidelines for your members, your customers when they're with you and doing these types of trips?
Well, guidelines as it relates to safety, without a doubt. I
Hmm.
mean, that, um, I've been on the water for so many years. I've seen some tragic things happen on the water, and um, it's, you know,
Like
everybody
what?
thinks that, well, I've seen a gentleman fall off the boat and got hit by the prop of the boat, and he bled to death. Um, I have been at the boat ramp when the game warden has brought in the body of a little girl that has got run over by an airboat while they were out duck hunting. And so those kind of things really um, reemphasize the importance of safety. And Lisa, I see it just about every day when I'm putting the boat in the water and I might be 15 minutes late. I'm not going to speed that process up, and that's usually when you see some accidents while people are putting the boat in and they're getting in a hurry and they
Mm,
feel like they're late and they're trying to beat other boats to a certain fishing spot. If I'm 15 minutes late, well, we're 15 minutes late. And the reason why I'm saying that is, um, there are some known spots that hold more fish, and the fish are much more active and feeding early in the morning. But if we're late for that, then we're just late for that. And I've seen other captains and other guides try to speed that process up. And usually when that happens, it's just a minor mistake. But we just can't afford to not be safe out on the
mm,
water. So, those kind of guidelines of, where to hold on to the boat while it's moving and to wear your life jackets and, to have the proper equipment when we're out waiting.
mhm.
Um, those kind of things is just very important for me that I cover, even if I have a group that I've fished with before. I said, guys, I'm going to cover these guidelines because if we're not safe, we're not having fun. And, so they know how important that is to me. And
Mhm.
I really emphasize that with the little ones. They need to hear that. But also, I want them to carry on that legacy of being safe in the outdoors.
Mhm. Most definitely. So let's talk about the little ones.
Okay.
What do you believe is it? Why do you believe it's important to introduce youth to fishing and hunting?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've been passionate about forever. I got my start in education working with the little kids as a physical education teacher, and so it's been a passion for me to introduce them to the outdoors. I believe the outdoors has so many benefits for all of us, but just trying to introduce people to a whole new way of life along the Texas coast and to spend time in the outdoors. Obviously, and we weight fish, so we're being very active. We're actually burning a lot of calories. Lisa, we will wade anywhere from a mile to 6 or 7 miles a day. And so when you're wading in the water and you're wearing different equipment, and I say that, in the summertime, you're not really wearing too much equipment that's kind of bogging you down. In the wintertime, you're wearing waders, and we wear stingray leggings, so protection around our legs and our feet to protect us from from some of the dangers. From a physical activity standpoint, to just generating a level of curiosity with these kids,
Mhm.
you can just see it. I mean, you can just see their curiosity. Hopefully, that lends to some level of creativity as they age. Um, for me, there's so many benefits of physical activity, and we talk about all those. And as you know, we talk about all those benefits of physical activity. I think the thing that we tend to leave out sometimes, or don't place as much emphasis on, is that mental part of being physically active, and what that does to us mentally by relieving stress, and being on the water and fishing in the water. You have a lot of times to reflect and to think and to relax and to relieve some stress. So the stress component is huge for all of us, not just the little ones. But so it's introducing them to all of those things in a new way of life that they may not have experienced.
Mhm. Most definitely. I think your biggest competitor with the youth is their phones and their computers and their video games, and they're inside and they're not being active, and they're feeling anxious and depressed and they're wondering why. And so I'm glad like services that you offer are really, giving them an opportunity to come out and experience all the things that come with it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, because I talk about that often when we're on the boat and we're going from one fishing spot to another spot. And some people are, getting into dry storage, pulling their phones out, whether they're just texting or checking email or whatever it is. I'm not afraid to talk about that a little bit as our kind of free zone from some of those things. And
Mhm.
it's interesting. I went through a stage of my life where I couldn't get off my phone, and it was related to work. It was related to checking emails, um, and I had to remind myself that that's not really what I'm interested in doing while we're out on the water.
Mhm.
So there's so many benefits, and just spending time with young children and with their families. That's what I like seeing, is families coming out, spending time together. As you say, they're disconnecting from everything and their phones, and so it can be a really rewarding experience.
Absolutely. I think like when families can spend time together and coordinate that with recreational time, so that it's just not sitting around watching Netflix, they can still have that time together and recreate with something like this is very valuable.
Yes, and when I started, I had the motto, you raise a kid outdoors and you raise a better kid. Um, it's just something I feel passionate about, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not going to quantify that statement. That's just something that resonates with me in the way that I was raised, in
Mhm.
the way that I've raised my daughter. So I raised my daughter in the outdoors. And, once they go off to college, and, your kids are becoming young adults, and they start having some questions and some anxieties, and they're entering the real world, or they think they are. And she's been able to reflect on those times on the water as just kind of, she calls it her saltwater therapy. It's just our time to go out on the water and just relax. um, catching fish is just a bonus.
Mhm.
That's just a way of life that I was introduced to, and it was so meaningful to me. So I've introduced that to my daughter, and love to do that with other families.
Yes, yes, you're planting seeds, and they could turn into like a lifelong passion, like you're going to be fishing and hunting, I have no doubt, into your 70s, 80s, 90s. It's just a part, it becomes a part of who you are.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope I'm doing that. And like I said, the Texas Gulf Coast is such a resource, and a lot of people are just not aware of the inland water. Okay, it's called inshore fishing. Inshore fishing is all of the bays and inlets and the channels that make up the Texas coast. Offshore, obviously, is offshore in the Gulf of Mexico, off the barrier islands. And we have so many people that I don't think they truly either understand or appreciate the resource that we have in the Texas Gulf Coast. It's such a precious resource, and the people that do experience that are really passionate about it. Back in 2021, we had a major freeze. All of us here in Texas, especially along the Texas Gulf Coast, remember the freeze in 21. And we had a major fish kill in that freeze. We lost almost 4 million fish due to that freeze.
Wow.
And it was the most major freeze we had since the 1980s. Now, in the 1980s, we had a series of fish kills.
Mm.
In 83, and then in 89, we had two in 89 that killed almost 40 million fish. So when those kind of things happen, when we had that freeze in 21, and especially hurt the speckled trout, the spotted sea trout. That is the game fish that I go after and I take clients after, is the sea trout. Really took a big hit.
Mm.
And so because of that, the state came in and changed the regulations in the limit of how many trout that each person could keep and the size restriction, because we have such a beautiful resource, the trout resource on the Texas Gulf Coast. And it's been great because they put some modifications into the trout resource. And since then, those numbers have come back. It's not the size necessarily and the age of the fish that have bounced back, but definitely numbers have bounced back since 21. So it's such a great resource along the Texas Gulf Coast.
That's a really important point. Like, there's a lot of groups, organizations that people can get involved with for conservation, whether it's Ducks Unlimited. Are you involved with any that you recommend?
Yeah, so both of those that you mentioned, the Coastal Conservation Association, very involved with that group, and I've been involved with Ducks Unlimited for a couple of decades. One of my former students is one of the regional directors of Ducks Unlimited, and so he's always keeping me abreast of some of the new initiatives that they have along the coast, and I'm talking about those initiatives with my clients when we're out on the water. So conservation is something we can do at a large scale, being a part of those groups, but just on a individual scale, conserving our resource is very important. So after the fish kill, I went literally a year, and I did a video about that, and went a year without keeping trout. I just wasn't going to keep trout. I was only going to do catch and release. So, I probably, if I caught a couple of hundred trout that year and I'm releasing them, then, that's a start. And I encourage my clients to do the same. I encouraged other guides to catch and release with their clients, and maybe other guides not charge quite as much because they're doing the catching and releasing and not keeping fish. So all of those efforts helped.
Yes, yes. So you had mentioned earlier something about it being kind of a spiritual experience. Can you touch on that?
Well, it is for me, and it's funny because some people get that and some people they don't get that. I mean,
Right.
it's just we all experience spirituality in a different way. So, and people talk about being religious. I don't necessarily talk about that. I talk about being spiritual, and it's hard not to be, Lisa. It's hard not to have that spiritual experience when you're putting in the boat early in the morning. I'm always when I am fishing, one of the first boats out at the local ramp. The sun's coming up. It's quiet. It's the sights and the sounds and the smells of the salt water. And you're getting to your fishing spot, And again, you're in the water early in the morning. It's quiet. You're hearing fish. We're often surrounded by dolphins, and again, it's a reflective time. It's a time for people to be spiritual in any way that they want to experience that, right? Um, and we're all different in the way we experience that, and that's what makes it great, because I've had people say, "Well, how can you be that spiritual? It's a Sunday morning, and you should be practicing it in church." And I understand what they're saying. The practicing of that spirituality, I can practice that just as much in my own way, being in the water and giving thanks or whatever I'm doing. It's a very spiritual experience. And I'll say that over the years, I fish more by myself than I have in the past.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's a real, very spiritual experience when you're experiencing that by yourself. um, and and I can say that I understand how it might not be for others. For me, and by far the majority of people that experience that with me, we all come away with the same feeling, and we talk about how it's very spiritual.
Look, I get it. It's the way that you painted it, how you're connecting to earth, the water, the morning, the sun coming up. It's, nature plays such a huge role in that reflection, in that grounding, in that, like I said, connection. If you're feeling detached or disconnected, putting yourself in environments that light you up. And it sounds like that's your environment to get lit up in a very positive way.
Yeah, very well said. And it really feels that way. And, most of the time when friends or clients come out to fish, we're taking pictures of fish. Everybody wants their picture with fish. But almost every time they take a whole roll of film, to use that word, but they take so many shots of the sun coming up and the ripple in the water, or the dolphins that are following us, or whatever it is. They're taking those pictures, and regardless if we're catching or not that day, they have all of those experiences to remember and to share with others.
Yes, yes. So I have another question about youth since you work with them a lot. What do you think is the most appropriate age to start teaching children about fishing and hunting?
Well, it's a great question, and I started my daughter very young, and I'm very fortunate that my wife allowed me to do that because she was young, um, and it took so much time just to get her prepared, and safe to be out on the water with me. But I started her really young, like 3 or 4 years of age. I think that age is okay if if you understand the importance of being safe, and you're not necessarily trying to experience the sport of fishing, that you're just introducing them um, to being on a boat and in the water, and that kind of experience, not necessarily an experience of staying out there 4 or 5 hours fishing. It's not for that age, but you can definitely take youngsters that are 4, 5, 6 years of age in a very extremely safe, slow speed way. You can take them out just to see, and to hear all the sights and sounds. But I think that, and what I've experienced is, when students get to around middle school age, is a really good time to introduce them to the art of wade fishing. I think that is a good age, and obviously, if they're not ready, and it could be later in life for some people. I didn't truly get into it until I was in college. I mean, I didn't, I did fish some growing up, and experimented with it some, but the passion of it, I truly didn't get into it and experience that spirituality related to it until I was in college. But kids that show an interest, I think middle school age, um, 11, 12, they're getting into their teenage years. 13, 14 is a really good time.
Mhm.
Um, I think they're old enough then to kind of comprehend some of the things that you're talking to them about as it relates to um, how to put on a lure on how to fish the lure. In other words, you have to retrieve it a certain way. They can kind of see that pattern, and they can kind of understand what you're trying to get them to feel and get them to notice. So I really like middle school age students and those students that are in their high school years.
Awesome, awesome. So what would you say would be some of the key lessons you want them to take away from a trip with you?
Uh, it again, it depends a little bit on the spectrum of from beginners all the way to the advanced.
Okay.
And it's interesting because most of the time, people that seek me out are people that their kids are already showing um, an interest in fishing, and they already know about weight fishing, and they have an interest in weight fishing, so they're seeking me out to maybe take that to another level.
Mhm.
So that's why a lot of my goals are related to um, just kind of understanding our trout population a little bit better, to become better fishermen, better fisher people. Okay. And, on lure presentation, on, what we're looking for on the water, to, to be more productive in catching fish. Um, patterns of fishing as it relates to wind, patterns of fishing as it relates to water temperature or as it relates to time of year. So those kind of patterns are the things that I want to establish with some of the young people that I fish with, because most of the young people that I fish with have been fishing before, and they want to experience something at a little bit higher level. Um, so those are some of the things, some of the takeaways that I like the youngsters to have.
Awesome, awesome. So could you kind of maybe just briefly talk about what a typical fishing trip looks like?
You bet. And like I said, I fish primarily out of Goose Island State Park in the Texas Coastal Bend.
Mhm.
So that the bays that we fish are typically Aransas Bay, Carlos Bay, Mesquite Bay, San Antonio Bay, St. Charles Bay, Copano Bay, and I can access all of those areas from that same boat ramp. And usually one of the first boats out. So it is a very early morning when you're fishing with me. Um, People that fish with me a long time, they love fishing with me in the wintertime because it's not an early morning.
Mhm.
Summertime, every other time of year, it's an early morning. Summertime, the feeding pattern is different, and really like to stay on the water the entire day. So it's not necessarily in early morning time, but we're out there early. So it's usually a pretty early night for the people that fish with me. Um, and it's usually anywhere from a 10-minute boat run to a 25-minute boat run, just depending on where the fish have been holding and where the fish have been feeding in any current situation. So um, and then it's putting on your wading gear, putting on, you have to have footwear, you have to have fishing booties or boots. Um, Really encourage people to wear stingray leggings, especially in the summer months when you have more stingrays on the flats. And I've never, knock on wood, I've never had anybody get hit by a stingray, but that I see it. I see it almost every weekend. Um, and So we're putting on our gear. I'm giving them an introduction to how to walk through the water so some of those things don't happen. We don't venture very far from the boat until I know everybody's gear is working correctly, and that I know that they know how to operate their tackle. We use bait casting gear. I have some spinning tackle and some closed reels, closed bait casting reels for people that might not necessarily know how to use some more advanced tackle. Um, and we start out into our wade, and usually my clients are only 10, 15 yards from me as we're covering some ground while we're fishing. Those people that have been fishing with me a long time, I just kind of let them venture out on their own. Some hold pretty close to me, some kind of venture out on their own and try to outfish the captain, so that makes it fun. And it just depends how long we're at a fishing location. It could be as little as 30 minutes. And then again, it could be as long as 2 hours. And then you're back to the boat. You're hydrating, you're getting some calories in you with some food, and you're heading back to the next spot. That next spot could be an oyster reef. The Texas middle bays have oyster reefs all over them. And those oyster reefs come pretty close to the surface of the bay. Some of those oyster reefs are exposed, and those are actually where we fish, because those oyster reefs attract bait fish, and the bait fish then attract uh, the predators and the trout. So we fish oyster reefs, or we fish structure grass, grassy areas on shorelines. So that's kind of what the day looks like. By the time we finish the second wade, it's we're having lunch on the boat, and I make sure that sometimes I'm buying the food, and sometimes other people want to supply that. It just depends on who I'm fishing with. But we're always going to have food and drinks on the boat, and then we're right back into it. So usually those trips are, I would say, are anywhere from 5 to 7 hours, just depending on how successful we are, what the conditions are like. Because sometimes when it gets windy out in the water, it's just not a lot of fun. I mean, I have plenty of areas where we can kind of go hide from the wind a little bit, where it's not too rough, but it's still not necessarily a lot of fun for people. So it kind of depends on who I'm fishing with and what the conditions are. So that's kind of the typical day in while fishing, if you will.
Do you ever night fish?
We do. We fish sometimes at night. Sometimes when it's a full moon, the fish are feeding all night, and so we'll fish on full moons. But in the wintertime, it's very hard to get off the water because we fish late in the evening, and as the sun goes down and the fishing's good, especially if it's a full moon,
Mhm.
spending quite a bit of time. But really don't go out at night. It's really more of those where you're going out during the day
Mhm.
and you're just staying out a little bit later. Now, I will say that one of the things that's really great down here on the Texas coast and on the coastal bend of Texas is flounder gigging. So you'll have all the flounder guides, they put in about an hour before it gets dark,
Mm.
and some of them stay out all night.
Wow.
So, and that's, flounder gigging is a whole different way of life. So when the bait fishermen are coming in and the artificial lure fishermen are coming in, a lot of your flounder guides, that's their time to go out and take clients out.
Awesome, awesome. What would you say is like your funniest, craziest experience?
Oh my goodness. Um, Man, I've had so many fun experiences. Um, I don't.
Or funniest?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Like you forgot the equipment
Well,
or
you know what? And I think it's been a series of things, and this by far is not funny. I'm thinking more on the lines of the crazy part.
uh-huh.
But I fish over 2 decades, and never ever did I encounter or heard of an encounter with wade fishermen and sharks.
Mm.
Now on the Texas coast, we encounter them on most days. And it's really pretty interesting to see that shift
Yeah.
over decades. Now, the great thing is I've never seen it. Never are they big in size. You're talking about small sharks, and usually they're not doing anything to, um, take away from your fishing experience. Sometime you'll catch a fish, and you're reeling in the fish, and a shark will hit that fish, and before you know it, all you have is a trout head because they've taken that trout. But I will say, and I'm not trying to scare people away, but that's been really interesting. The influx of the smaller size sharks, and when I say smaller, I'm talking very small, from I would say a foot and a half to 3.5 feet, right? The smaller sharks, and different variety of sharks, from the black tip to the nurse sharks to the bonnet head sharks that looks very much like a hammerhead.
Mhm.
Um, so do have some crazy stories about people reeling in, and all of a sudden they don't feel the fish anymore, and because the shark has hit it, and have a lot of experiences like that. But um, yeah, every experience is a fun experience.
Mhm.
So I don't necessarily have a most funny right now that's popping into my head.
No problem. Would you say the new sharks that are coming in, is that climate weather related?
Well, I don't know so much if it's climate related. Um, there has been, in the specific area in which I fish, there was a huge project by the state to open up that area access to offshore. And so there was a little bayou or river, a little connection from our inshore fishing bays
Mhm.
to offshore. And when that was widened by the state, and now we have more fish from offshore that are able to go through that opening
Okay.
and migrate, if you will. It's just really more, of just coming through that inlet. And when that happened, we did see a little bit more of an influx in sharks, but we also saw a huge improvement on the trout fishing, with the size of trout and the quantity of trout. And that's a big issue for trout fishermen. There's have been so many changes over the last several years since the freeze of 21 to the size aspect of regulations of how many trout you can keep, and the size of trout you can keep, and a lot of debate and arguments by a lot of people. But that those conservation efforts have really helped the specific area where I fish, as well as the opening of this bayou that has led a lot of the bait fish and game fish and some sharks into that area.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah,
So let me ask you, how do you balance your passion for the outdoors with your other commitments, whether it's work or family and that type of thing?
yeah, yeah. No, great question. And it seems like my entire career I've been teaching and preaching to people about finding that balance. Um, and not a week goes by where I'm talking to somebody here at my real job, um, about finding that balance and having those hobbies, having those things that you can escape to. Um, yes, some days it's harder than others. Some semesters, some years are more challenging than others. But finding that balance is very important to me. Probably over my 30-year career in education, that's been something that I've challenged myself on doing more than anything else, and um, reminding myself why I'm in my profession. I'm in education because I love working with people. And the older that I get and the more years I have in education, the more I appreciate the service aspect of education and giving back. And that's why I love my hobby of fishing and birding on the Texas coast as much as I do, because I feel like I'm kind of giving back to that environment, that lifestyle that has been my release, and that I've loved so much. But it's always a challenge, Lisa. I mean, you know how it is. And I know you have a lot of hobbies as well, and um, it is. You just have to continue to remind yourself that work is going to be there in the morning. And when you finish that work late in the evening on a Friday, it's going to be there for you Monday morning. But if you can kind of just shut down a little bit as it relates to work, if you can, we know there's sometimes you just can't do that. And so over the years, I've really tried to practice that. And I think I've become fairly successful at that. But when I see people that are, um, my age or around that age, and they don't have hobbies, I try to engage them on that conversation
Mhm.
of, okay, so what does it look like? A typical day for you look like in 10 years, in 20 years? I don't believe in, the word retirement. I don't, I believe in shutting down maybe a job that you have to be at
Mhm.
from 8 to 5 every day. But I don't believe in the word retirement. A change of lifestyle, maybe. But for people that think they're going to retire and all of a sudden change their lifestyle, research doesn't support that. It just doesn't. I mean, research is going to support that you pretty much are going to do the things that you're accustomed to doing.
Mhm.
And by the time we get to retirement age, we have more limitations, and those limitations are keeping us from doing the things and learning new skills, um, how to wade fish and those kind of things. So we have more um, aches and pains. We have more chronic disease set in. We're on more medications,
Mhm.
in general with that age of people. So I try to get people to experience things and to think about those things earlier so that they can continue to be active. But as you know, Lisa, it's a challenge to balance. It always is.
Yeah.
Um, but I do have a little bit of a mind block when I hear people say, "Oh, I just don't have time."
Yeah.
I get it. No, I get it. Right. I don't have a whole lot of time outside of my workday, but I know at the end of the day, it's very unlikely that I'm going to have the type of workout that I want to have. I'm kind of addicted to working out, and I know at the end of the day, there's going to be too many roadblocks and obstacles for me to work out like I want to at the end of the day. So I know I have to get up at 4:30 or 4:45 in the morning to get that in. It's just something I have to do. So this idea of I just don't have time, I understand, and I understand how if we say that for a long period of time, if we say that over a period of years, that there is some truth to it. You kind of build that
I
in.
always say you're running out of time, so maybe
Yeah,
you need to
yes,
prioritize.
absolutely. And again, I'm not obviously I'm not perfect as it relates to finding that balance, but I am pretty good at going back to square one as it relates to my own fitness journey and say, you know what, I'm not feeling it, but I'm going to get up. And today it's not a jog. Today is just a walk on the treadmill and, spend 30 minutes stretching. That's all this morning is. And I don't really call that a workout. But if you do that, then you can gain some steam. And that becomes, in itself, becomes a way of life.
Mhm.
So I'm really, um, the older I get, the more I'm kind of like scaling down on the things that I want and focusing on wellness and my own health,
Mhm.
and my own spirituality out on the water.
Yes, yes. And it's so
Yeah,
good that your hobby, your passion is an active one. I mean, have hobbies that you enjoy, but make sure there's maybe like an active hobby in that mix so that as you go down the path of life, you have less aches and pains and you're more mobile and you can have like those spiritual experiences in places that you really enjoy, like the water.
Yeah, and as active as we are, and as active as I've been over the years, I'm going to have the aches and pains. It's just going to happen. My body feels totally different after a 3 mile run now versus before. You know, I've run a marathon, and after the marathon, I wasn't even that sore.
Yeah.
My half marathon a year and a half ago, I thought I was going to die afterwards. And so, you know, as you age, and you're going to have more issues. It's part of it, but that's more reason to spend time on your body and to do the little things of stretching and those kind of things. So, you know, I don't know if I really answered the question about balance. All I can say is I put a lot of emphasis on that balance, and it's something that I'm reminded of and remind myself of and
Yeah.
reflect on every day. Every day I reflect on that.
That's an excellent point. That's it right there, that awareness. There's so many people that are just unaware, and then they wake up 20 years later and they're like, man, all I am is my job and I don't have any interests and I haven't done anything. And so that it does start with that awareness and that practice every day and how to strike that balance. Some days are better than others, but I think, like you say, there can be an art to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want people to be, you know, realistic with themselves. So if you think you're just going to stop everything when your career is over, if you're the lucky one and you get to stop your career and spend more time doing the things you want to do, if you're one of those lucky ones, if you think you're just going to stop and pick up something very active and you've never been active, research just really doesn't support that.
Mhm.
You know, and my mom is 86, and I love talking about my mom because she's aged so well, and it's so funny because she talked about I've run for the majority of my life, and you know, 10Ks, half marathons, whatever it is. My mom's always, yeah, well, I'm going to run a marathon when I retire. Oh, okay, mom, sure you are, right? Now she stays active, but of course, you know, she's 86 now, so she's never run a marathon. It's probably not going to happen. We need to be honest. We need to be realistic. But
Right.
I'm so thankful found balance, and she is very active. So, but that idea that we don't have hobbies and we work 30, 40 years, and all of a sudden we're going to, you know, people that talk about picking up golf as a hobby. Okay, you know, and you may, but if you haven't played it or experienced it in 30, 40 years, and all of a sudden you want to experiment with that, it is extremely hard. It's extremely challenging.
Mhm.
It costs a lot of money. There's so many challenges along with that
Mhm.
that it's just not likely. You know, we do what in retirement, and again, I'm not a big fan of the word, we're going to do pretty much what we're doing right now. So think about your lifestyle right now. You know,
Mhm.
the best predictor of our future is what we're doing right now as it relates to how active we are.
Yep.
And so
Behavior is
I
a
think,
pattern.
yeah, and I think that's why, and I guess we kind of came full circle there, but I think that's why weight fishing has meant so much to me, because there are some trips where we are waiting up to several miles of wading in the water where you're waist deep and you're wearing gear in the in and out of the boat. It can take a lot out of you. And I love that lifestyle of, yeah, I might not be at the gym right now, um, but I'm still burning some calories. I'm still living the wellness lifestyle.
Mhm.
So I think that's one reason why I've attached myself so much to weight fishing.
Awesome, awesome. Well, that
Mm.
might go into my next question because I was going to ask you what was the most important lesson you learned from your experiences with wade fishing.
Yeah. And again, you know, as you get older, we can kind of reflect more in a broad way and over a longer period of time. And it's simply that's related to the balance of it. I mean, it's the big picture of, you know, as my daughter says, saltwater therapy. Once you get out and on the water and you're one of the first boats out and the sun's coming up and you experience that and you experience getting in the water. It really doesn't matter what I have been going through that week. All that stuff just kind of it finds a way of just easing your mind a little bit. And some trips are harder than others, some semesters, some years, but as a whole, that is my biggest takeaway. That um, yes, me and you are professors. This is what we do, but it's not who we are. I mean, who we are is much more than our job title. Our education is very important to mine is to me and yours is to you. Our titles, yeah, I mean, it's kind of important in the world that we live in, but it's really not something that I give much thought to because it's not who I am. And so I've tried to instill that into my own daughter, and I usually try to instill that while we're out on the water.
Mhm.
And so she made a transition of her entire life being about playing golf. And she was so successful in playing golf. She accomplished everything she wanted, including a Division I scholarship. And, you know, but she says all the time as she transitions now into the work world, um, golf is not who I am. It's just what I do.
Mhm.
And so, I feel the same way about my profession, and I'm able to live that when I experience what I do when I go out on the water. And so that's just a big picture reflection, you know?
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. That's that spiritual
yeah,
connection you're touching on too.
yeah.
Um, so do you have any future plans for your club, and where do you see it maybe 5, 10 years from now?
Well, great question. And yes, I have big plans to be part of Rockport Outdoor Adventures. Right now, I'm not trying to grow a business. Right now, I'm focused on my real job. I love taking friends out to fish and to have fun. Um, but over the years, I've become very interested in taking people out birding. And birding in Texas is huge. And I've studied the birds of the Gulf Coast, and I love showing people all the different bird species. And in our area, specifically our area where we fish in the Texas coastal bend, is the home of the whooping crane. And the whooping crane, at one point in our country, there were only 20 whooping cranes, and now the number is up to over 600. Some of that number is captive birds, but 2/3 of that number are birds that are in the wild habitat. And those birds, they winter, or I should say, they breed up in Canada, and then they travel all the way down specifically to Aransas Wildlife Refuge. Is the only place in the world they travel to, in
Wow.
the Texas Gulf Coast. That is the area that we fish, and that's our backyard, if you will. And people flocked to that area to see the whooping crane. So that's the main bird that people come and see. The Mexican eagle is another bird. It's the caracara, and it's really a falcon, but it's only in some of the southern states. And so people want to see the caracara and all the other different shorebirds that we have on the Texas Gulf Coast. And so I've become much more passionate about taking people out, both people that live in Texas that want to just experience uh, that resource along the Texas coast, and those people that come from all over the country to want to experience the birds that we have on the Texas coast. So that, along with fishing more, um, and again, it's a hobby now, but as it continues to as I get closer to hanging up the 8 to 5 and then venture out a little bit more. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. That's so cool. Well, thank you, John, for coming on my channel today and talking about your business, your company, your hobby, whatever you want to call it. I think it's
Yeah.
cool. you know, you have found that passion and it's a lifelong passion and you're sharing it with others and teaching others. And I think that's just awesome, you know, way to give back.
Thanks, Lisa. I really appreciate you.
Yes, yes. And if you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye, John.
Yeah.